It has 6 strings and no single inventor. It is older than every country that claims it, and more people play it than any other instrument on Earth. You've heard it everywhere, around a fire, in a cathedral, screaming out of a stadium, whispering from a bedroom at 2 in the morning. A wooden box and a handful of strings. But the guitar you know took 4,000 years to build. It passed through ancient empires, Spanish workshops, American factories, and a small electronics shop in California. And at every step, someone tore it apart and rebuilt it for a new kind of music. This is the story of how a simple wooden box became the most popular instrument in human history. To find the beginning of the guitar, you have to go back further than most instruments, past the orchestra, past written music, into the ancient world. Because the guitar was never invented, it was inherited. For as long as humans have made music, they've stretched strings across hollow boxes and plucked them. The principle is almost absurdly simple. A string under tension, a chamber to amplify it, a way to change the notes. From that one idea grew a vast family of instruments scattered across the ancient world. Think of the lyre of ancient Greece, the tanbur of Persia, the long-necked instruments of Central Asia, Egypt, and the Mediterranean. They were cousins, all of them, solving the very same puzzle in different ways, in different lands, across thousands of years. The guitar is not the child of any single one of them. It is the heir of all of them, the shape that humanity, after endless experiment, slowly and stubbornly agreed upon. One of the most important ancestors was the oud, a pear-shaped, fretless instrument with a deep, rounded back. The oud rose in the ancient Middle East and became the heart of music across the Arab world. It was beautiful, expressive, and portable, and it traveled. In the year 711, the Moors crossed into southern Spain, and they brought the oud with them. For centuries, Spain became a meeting point of cultures and of instruments. The oud's design soaked into European music. From it, craftsmen developed the lute, a curved-backed, fretted instrument that became the darling of medieval and Renaissance Europe. Meanwhile, the very word we use was already ancient. Guitar traces back through Spanish to the Greek word kithara, a plucked string instrument of the classical world, and possibly further still to ancient Persia. The name had been passed down mouth to mouth for thousands of years before it ever landed on the instrument we know. So when you pick up a guitar, you're holding the end of an enormous chain, one that runs back through Renaissance lutes, through the Moorish oud, all the way to the first person who stretched a string and listened to it ring. But the instrument still didn't look like a guitar. It didn't sound like one. For that, the story moves to one country in particular, a country that would spend the next several centuries obsessed with getting it right. If the guitar has a homeland, it is Spain. In the middle of the 15th century, in the kingdoms of Spain, a new instrument appeared, the vihuela. And for the first time, you would recognize the shape. The vihuela had a flat back, not the rounded bowl of the lute, a sound hole, a fretted neck, and a waisted body that curved in at the middle. It carried 6 double courses of gut strings, tuned almost exactly like a guitar today. The Spanish aristocracy adored it. Composers wrote for it. It was, in everything but name, an early guitar. Over the next 2 centuries, the instrument kept changing. The Baroque guitar, smaller with 5 courses of strings, spread out of Spain and into the royal courts of Europe. Kings played it. Painters put it in their portraits. It became the fashionable instrument of an entire continent. And slowly, through generations of trial and error, the design simplified and settled. By the end of the 1700s, the guitar had moved towards 6 single strings instead of doubled courses, and that familiar figure-8 body. It was getting closer, but it was still small, still quiet, still searching for the form that would make it immortal. That final transformation would come from a single workshop and a single man in the south of Spain. His name was Antonio de Torres, and almost everything you think a guitar is, he decided. Born in 1817, Torres was a Spanish luthier, a builder of stringed instruments, working in Andalusia in the south of Spain. And in the middle of the 19th century, he did something that sounds small, but changed everything. He asked what actually makes a guitar loud and warm and beautiful. The answer, he realized, was the top, the thin sheet of wood under the strings, the soundboard that vibrates and turns a plucked string into a voice. So Torres made the body bigger to move more air. He settled the scale length, the distance the strings vibrate. And underneath the soundboard, he built his masterpiece, fan bracing, a delicate pattern of thin wooden struts spread out like the ribs of a fan that let the top vibrate freely while holding it together. The result was a guitar with more volume, richer tone, and a balance across every string that no earlier instrument had matched. Here is how important that is. Every classical guitar built anywhere in the world today still traces its fundamental design back to Torres's workshop. He didn't just improve the guitar, he defined it. The shape resting on a musician's knee in a concert hall tonight is, in its bones, the shape Antonio de Torres settled more than a century and a half ago. The modern guitar had finally been born, but it was a gut-strung, gentle, classical thing, an instrument of concert halls and quiet rooms. To become the loudest voice in popular music, it would have to cross an ocean and be reinvented all over again. In 1833, a German cabinet maker stepped off a ship in New York. His name was Christian Friedrich Martin, and the company he founded would help turn the guitar into an American machine. Martin brought old-world craftsmanship to a new and restless country, and he solved a problem that was coming whether anyone liked it or not. Americans wanted their guitars louder. Louder meant more string tension, and more tension could tear a delicate European top apart. Martin's answer was a new skeleton inside the guitar, X-bracing. Instead of fanning the struts like Torres, he crossed 2 main braces in an X beneath the soundboard, a pattern strong enough to survive far higher tension while still letting the top sing. He built one as early as 1843, and that single idea quietly prepared the American guitar for the thing that would define its sound: steel. In the early 20th century, steel strings replaced gut. They were brighter, harder, and far louder. And by 1921, Martin had turned its production toward steel string guitars to feed a public hungry for volume. While Martin perfected the flat top, another American went a completely different direction. Orville Gibson, working in Kalamazoo, Michigan, looked at the violin, at its carved, arched top, and asked why a guitar couldn't be built the same way. The result was the arch top, a guitar with a sculpted, curving face that cut through a room. The company built on his designs, Gibson, was formed in 1902 and would become one of the 2 giants of the American guitar. Then came the body that conquered everything. The Dreadnought, named after a class of enormous battleship, was a big, deep, booming guitar first made in 1916. When Martin relaunched it with X-bracing, it became the loudest, fullest acoustic most people had ever heard. It was the perfect machine for the music rising out of America, the blues, country, and folk that would soon shake the whole world. Out on porches and in railway towns, in churches and crowded bars, this loud new American guitar found its people. The bluesman bending a note until it cried, the cowboy singer, the traveling folk musician with nothing but a story and 6 strings. The guitar was becoming the instrument of ordinary people, cheap enough to own, tough enough to survive the road, and finally, loud enough to be heard. It had escaped the concert hall. It belonged to everyone now. The acoustic guitar was now powerful, mass-produced, and everywhere. But in a loud modern world of big bands and dance halls, even the dreadnought had a problem. Stand it next to a wall of horns and drums, and you still couldn't hear it. The guitar needed to get louder than wood could ever go, and the only way left was electricity. In the 1930s, a guitarist in a big band faced a humiliating problem. Nobody could hear him. The guitar was a rhythm instrument in the back, buried under brass. To step forward, it had to be amplified. The breakthrough came in 1931 from a man named George Beauchamp. Working with the machinist Adolf Rickenbacker, he built something strange, a guitar made of cast aluminum with an electromagnetic pickup, a magnet wrapped in wire that turned a vibrating steel string into an electrical signal. You couldn't play it like a normal guitar. You laid it flat across your lap. They nicknamed it the frying pan. It looked like a toy. It changed music forever. The frying pan is widely considered the first commercially successful electric guitar. The first time a guitar's true voice came not from a wooden box, but from a speaker. It was a profound shift, deeper than it first appears. For 4,000 years, a string instrument's sound had been shaped by the wood around it, the size of the body, the grain of the top, the genius of the luthier. Now, suddenly, the wood barely mattered. The pickup and the amplifier had become the real voice. For the first time in its long history, the guitar was no longer just an acoustic object. It was an electrical machine. The idea spread fast. In 1936, Gibson released the ES-150, an electric guitar you held like a normal one, and a young player named Charlie Christian used it to make the guitar a lead instrument in jazz, single notes ringing out over a whole band for the first time. But these were still hollow guitars, and at high volume, they howled with feedback. The fix was radical. Get rid of the hollow body altogether. Make the guitar out of a solid plank of wood. Inventors had tinkered with the idea. Les Paul famously built an experimental solid guitar he called the log. But turning it into something the world could buy took a different kind of mind. That mind belonged to Leo Fender, a radio repairman from California who didn't even play guitar. He thought like an engineer. Why not build a solid-body electric that was simple, tough, and mass-produced on an assembly line, with parts you could bolt on and replace? In 1950, he did exactly that. After a naming clash, his guitar became the Telecaster, the first mass-produced solid-body electric guitar in history. Gibson answered in 1952 with a solid body of its own, designed with the guitarist Les Paul carrying his name. And in 1954, Fender unveiled the one that would become the most recognizable guitar shape on Earth, the Stratocaster, contoured to the body with 3 pickups and a built-in vibrato. In just over 20 years, the guitar had been completely reborn. It was no longer a wooden box you played in a quiet room. It was an electric machine that could fill a stadium, and it was about to become the loudest voice of an entire century. With the solid-body electric, The guitar didn't just join popular music, it took it over. Suddenly, the instrument could do anything: whisper, cry, growl, or scream. It became the engine of rock and roll, the cry of the blues, the swing of jazz, the twang of country. The guitarist moved from the back of the band to the front of the stage. The instrument that had once struggled to be heard became, almost overnight, the single loudest voice in popular culture. And it spread on a scale the old luthiers could never have dreamed of. Records and radio carried the sound of the guitar into every home. Factories turned out instruments by the millions. A teenager anywhere in the world could pick up 6 strings and, with 3 chords, speak a language the whole planet understood. The guitar became the sound of youth, of rebellion, of freedom itself. And here is the strange beauty of it. The guitar had no academy and no gatekeepers. You did not need years of training to make it sing. You did not have to read a single note of music. You did not have to be wealthy. A cheap guitar and a borrowed handful of chords were enough to begin. That, more than anything, is why the guitar spread where pianos and violins could not: into garages and bedrooms, onto street corners and rooftops, into the hands of anyone, anywhere, with something to say. Think about how far the instrument had traveled. From the oud carried into Spain over 1,000 years ago, through the quiet workshops of Antonio de Torres, across the ocean to Martin and Gibson, into the hands of an engineer who couldn't play a note. And now, electrified and amplified, it was the heartbeat of the modern world. The numbers tell the rest of the story. Today, the guitar is the most played and most sold instrument on the planet. More than 50 million people around the world play it. Every year, millions of new guitars are built and sold, a global industry worth billions. No instrument is more widespread, more recognized, or more loved. From a single string stretched across a hollow box to this. So, return to where we started. 6 strings and no single inventor. An instrument older than the countries that claim it, played by more people than any other on Earth. The guitar was never finished, because no one ever owned it. The oud became the lute. The lute became the vihuela. The vihuela became Torres's masterpiece. Torres's masterpiece crossed an ocean and grew louder. And when wood couldn't go any louder, the guitar plugged itself into the wall and roared. That is the real secret of the guitar. It survived 4,000 years not by staying the same, but by constantly being reborn, each generation tearing it down and rebuilding it for their own music. A wooden box, a handful of strings, and an idea so simple and so deep that we have never stopped reinventing it. And somewhere right now, someone is picking one up for the very first time and writing the next chapter of a story that has no end. If you enjoyed this journey through the history of the guitar, subscribe and stay with us for more of the hidden histories that shaped our world.